It afforded Gary his second chance in 2 years to flex his good guy muscles as one of the only uncorrupted police officers in Gotham City. He reprised the role in The Dark Knight.
You get him to talk, I'll get him to sing.
We're going after the mob's life savings. Things will get ugly.
I knew the risk when I took this job.
And he defended his decision to complement his work in art house with more mainstream roles.
People love it when they put you in a box, you know what I mean? I always said, you know, as long as I was at the Royal Court, the Queen was at Buckingham Palace and Ken Branagh was at the Royal Shakespeare Company, everything was fine with the world, you know? But I want to do different things and you know, maybe that's partly why this works and why it is good, and that he's got these people that come in, you know, and know their stuff.
Please welcome Christopher Walken to the stage.
When Christopher Walken was finally granted his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at the age of 61, he couldn't quite believe it.
I'm very lucky that my mother put me in show business. This is a thrill, a big day for me. I'm not sure how I arrived at this place today, but one sure thing, I've been lucky.
And luckily, Quentin Tarantino was at hand to remind him of how he got there.
I don't think they could be giving it to anybody better than Chris, because it's like, you know, Chris I think when he was born, he was, you know, they pulled him out of the womb and said, you just gave birth to an actor.
And in fact, it's fair to say that the baker's son, whose mother harbored dreams of stardom, did get cracking on his vocation at a very young age.
But when I was a kid, I was in show business, I was in musical comedy, and I come from a family of people in show business. So, you know, to be here, I've been in show business since I was 7 years old. So this is pretty amazing.
He began his career as a child extra on TV as Ronnie Walken. He later changed his name to Christopher and made his feature film debut in a small role in Sidney Lumet's The Anderson Tapes. Just like Gary Oldman, he proved his commitment to his breakthrough role by shedding lots of weight for the part. In his case, the film was Michael Cimino's 1978 masterpiece, The Deer Hunter, and Michael's choice of weight loss diet was bananas and rice. He won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of a young Pennsylvania steelworker emotionally destroyed by the Vietnam War.
Do you know who I am, Mr. Wally?
I give up. Who are you?
The Antichrist.
The famously deadpan actor built a reputation for playing psychos and deviants over the next 20 years. In films like The Comfort of Strangers, Batman Returns, True Romance, and Last Man Standing. Although he'd appeared in a few romantic comedies along the way, the high-profile roles didn't really start lightening up until Catch Me If You Can in 2002. His role as the father of a con artist who forged millions of dollars worth of checks won him several honors as well as an Oscar nomination. And then came a string of action comedies like Welcome to the Jungle, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Balls of Fury, in which he played the evil ping-pong enthusiast Feng.
Always do have an eye for talent.
He was also approached by Adam Sandler to play an inventor in his what-if time travel comedy Click. Asked whether he might be tempted to turn back the clock, he replied,
No, my life turned out good. It might be fun to be a kid again, you know, just to run around and be 7, maybe 6. You know, yeah, I think I might like that.
Although he didn't get to relive his childhood, he did get to run around in the remake of the John Waters comedy Hairspray, which showcased the singing and dancing talents that have made him a huge hit over 7 appearances as host of the iconic comedy show Saturday Night Live. Now in his mid-60s, Christopher is busier than he's been for decades, with 3 new films scheduled for release, as well as an ongoing gig as a hologram at Universal Studios' disaster attraction. Tilda Swinton is another actor who's built a reputation for playing dark and stormy characters. In 1996's Female Perversions, she portrayed an ambitious attorney who wallows in excess and meaningless sex while dealing with her personal problems. She played an obsessive island leader who's prepared to kill to preserve order in the beach, and a self-replicating cyborg in 2002's Technolust. But the nasty pasty that really sealed her global notoriety was her portrayal of the White Witch in the big-budget adaptation of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
I wanted her to be really white, and I wanted her to be really evil, and to be as frightening as I would have found it as a child. And I was never frightened by those moustache-twirling, shouting witches when I was a child. And I thought that maybe a cold witch was what we needed, so I kind of, did that.
However, before she jumped into the job of scaring the bejesus out of small children, she ran it by her young twins, Xavier and Honor.
Prince of Narnia.
I read it to my children because I had this idea that if I decided to do this film, that I would have children backing away from me for the rest of my life. So I thought it had better be worth it, So I read it to my children and they really liked it.
Disney's film version of the C.S. Lewis book went on to gross $750 million, a huge relief to its investors.
No, the king needs servants. I guess I could...
It was a huge undertaking. I mean, 1,500 people came to lunch every day when we were in the South Island, and we went to the set in helicopters. So we did get a sense that that it was an investment for somebody. But in a way, it was less of an investment for us because, as I say, it was worth it. There was something that held us there. I think if we hadn't been so involved in the story and also with each other, because we were, really a familial group who made the film, I think it would have been very easy to get caught up in how big it was.
Playing a major part in a blockbuster fantasy franchise had brought the Anglo-Scottish actress a long way from her art house and performance art roots. After attending the Westheath Girls' School in the same class as Princess Diana, she went to Cambridge University before working in the theatre.
We will take Narnia!
She began her film career in the 80s with roles in films by experimental director Derek Jarman, and went on to star in the movie adaptation of Orlando by Virginia Woolf. Since then, she's been happily flitting between small independent and big mainstream projects.
I don't actually believe in the self. I really don't. I think that every minute you can decide what you're going to be. I really honestly believe that. And that's being borne out by my experience of life, because I'm realizing that it is true that people change and things change people and people change things, and it is the only thing you can rely on.
However, there's no doubt that Tilda's heart still lies very firmly in independent and experimental cinema.
I propose people forget the idea of making a profit and just, follow their voice. Maybe make films for less money. Just make more films for less money. Maybe have an idea of making 2 or 3 films, one after the other, very, very cheaply in their backyard. That's the kind of thing that develops a voice and gives people confidence and makes something personal and less for the marketplace.
She was bowled over by winning the Richard Harris Award for Achievement in Independent Film.
I'm kind of confused, to be honest. It's not normally on my dance card, so not my idea, but I'm very proud and very happy to be here.
Winning awards was something she'd come to terms with after netting both a BAFTA and an Oscar for her supporting performance as a lawyer in Michael Clayton opposite George Clooney. In contrast to Chris Walken and Gary Oldman, she actually had to put on weight to pull off the part.
This woman, when you see the film, she's really struggling. She's not in her body, really, and her body's like running away with her. There's a scene with her on a treadmill, and I remember when I read that scene, I thought, she's got to have a pot belly. You can't run on a treadmill and play this character and be lean. You've got to really, be out of control. So, yeah, there were a lot of pies.
But for Tilda, method acting does have its limits. The porcelain-skinned teetotaler didn't dive into a bottle to play an alcoholic in her 2008 film Julia. She based the character on one of her real-life friends.
secondhand, interested in alcoholism my whole life, and I've never really seen what this film manages to do, which is to show the ruin of a woman in particular, the real waste and ruin, and something about the powerlessness that the alcoholic gets into.
Julia premiered at the Berlin Film Festival, as did a documentary about Derek Jarman that Tilda both wrote and narrated, bringing the total of her film releases for 2008 up to 5, including the first Narnia sequel, Burn After Reading, and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
This is Hans Gruber.
Alan Rickman sits at number 46 on the American Film Institute's list of 100 greatest villains for his dastardly portrayal of terrorist Hans Gruber in the 1988 action classic Die Hard. The deep-throated, heavy-browed actor actually started out playing romantic leads in Shakespeare plays and later in British films like Sense and Sensibility and Truly, Madly, Deeply. And in 1995, Empire magazine put him at 34 on its list of sexiest film stars. However, once he got to Hollywood, he quickly became typecast as arch-cads like Hans Gruber and the Sheriff of Nottingham. That campery easily tipped over into comedy in films like Dogma and Galaxy Quest, as well as Love Actually. Like many of his British colleagues, he hitched a ride aboard the Harry Potter steam train and has been happily hamming it up as Potions Professor Severus Snape since the franchise kicked off in the year 2000. Although he's known for passing up film offers in favour of work in the theatre, he deigned to appear in 2 major films in 2006. In Snowcake, he reunited with his Galaxy Quest co-star Sigourney Weaver to play an English expat with a murky past who develops a relationship with an autistic woman in Canada.
Aren't you cold?
I have an unusual body temperature control.
Well, he has this guilt and he has all this unresolved anger, but the whole story of the film is about how he's releasing himself from that. So it's a bit like a bird learning to fly, so as long as you have some image like that, there's an effort in flapping wings or getting out of a nest or getting up in the air.
The film was shot in a small town in northern Ontario during winter. Being so far away from the film community reminded Alan that Snowcake was about real people and needed to be given a proper platform. It opened at the Berlin Film Festival, and Alan was asked to comment on the lack of lead roles on offer to older actresses like Sigourney.
I think it's everybody's loss. There are, great older women. Why do we always have to look for the new model on the... It's like a car showroom.
Yeah, fresh faces, right?
Yeah, well, it's crazy. It's our loss. It means we're a bit immature, isn't it?
That would surely have been music to the ears of one jury member, British actress Charlotte Rampling, who frequently speaks out about the pressure on women to keep looking young. It also spoke volumes about Alan's 40-year relationship with former councilwoman Rima Horton, with whom he shares a home in London. 2006 also brought round the opportunity to take part in the long-awaited big-screen adaptation of Patrick Susskind's novel Perfume.
Zwölfnotenhaltiges Parfum kann man nur komponieren, indem man eine besondere Note hinzufügt.
Letzte Nacht habe ich geträumt, du seist tot.
There was huge pressure on the film to live up to expectations.
Well, I wasn't directing it, so it was easier for me because I just had to act it. But I knew that I was in the hands of a very great director, and so really it was put on the costume and put on the wig and say my lines.
He reprised the role of the protective father in Tim Burton's adaptation of a Stephen Sondheim musical, although this time there were ulterior motives. In Sweeney Todd, he plays the slimy bully Judge Turpin, who intends to marry the young woman he's been raising as his ward.
Mercy on your soul.
Underneath all the throat-slitting, cannibalism and sexual perversion, Alan saw the film's softer side.
Tim's turned it into something almost poetic and rather beautiful. So you know, good triumphs in the end.
The following year, he headed for the countryside for a taste of the finer things in life, to join the cast and crew of the drama Bottle Shock.
I'm not introducing anything completely
The film, which co-starred Bill Pullman, Rachel Taylor and Chris Pine, revolved around the world of wine and was set in the Napa Valley region of California.
This guy, Stephen Spurrier, who I play, ran a wine shop in Paris, and in order to publicise that, he took advantage of the then American bicentennial to set up a blind wine tasting between American and French wines. And there's no way it could have been a fix, because his jury was some of the most celebrated all French jury, wine experts and chefs and wine writers of the time. And history tells us that the American wines won.
Unlike some of his more stuffy peers, South London's Jason Statham honed his craft by following his parents into street theatre. He also showed an early aptitude for sports such as football and the martial arts. And at the age of 22, he came 12th in the World Diving Championships, before becoming a model for French Connection. A few years later, he met Guy Ritchie, who was looking for someone to play a streetwise con artist in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. It was the kickstart to the film career Jason was looking for.
Doing what I did on the street corners that got me a part in a Guy Ritchie movie, and then, you know, several films later I met up with Luc Besson, and he was the catalyst for all these sort of action movies I'm doing now. If it wasn't for him and the Transporter franchise, then I don't think anyone would have known that I could, you know, do some of the physical sort of stuff that I've sort of been doing for years.
His background in martial arts enabled him to do all his own stunts in Transporter, which immediately brought him passage to the sequel in 2005.
Yeah, you have to be, you know, you have to be physically strong and flexible. So, like you say, you don't pull muscles, and if you just come, you know, spend 3 weeks in the bar and then turn up on a movie set ready to do all these kind of things, you're going to hurt yourself.
In between the two Transporters was a supporting role in the remake of The Italian Job, as well as small parts in Cellular and Collateral. In 2005, he collaborated for a third time with his old mate Guy Ritchie on the no-holds-barred slugfest Revolver, that was slammed by critics for the seeming gratuitousness of its violence.
It's violence for violence sake, you know, if there is such a thing. I mean, it helps with the story. I mean, I don't think this kind of a story can exist without the violence within it, so, I mean, it's necessary.
Then came a lead role in Crank, in which his character unwittingly drinks a poison that forces him to keep his adrenaline pumping. Otherwise, he'll drop dead.
It's about a man who's trying to find the man who killed him and trying to sustain his life while he does so in a certain amount of time. I suppose you could liken it to... in fact, I'm not going to liken it to anything. That's my answer. Because this one stands quite alone in the way it's shot and the way it looks. So to liken it to anything would be an injustice to the movie.
In an interview with Maxim magazine, Jason said the film's frenetic pace reminded him of his own life, which had 3 films a year for the last 2 years to show for itself. Perhaps his hectic lifestyle had been the catalyst for his split with girlfriend Kelly Brook, who ran off with Billy Zane on the set of Survival Island in 2005. The pace barely let up, however, in 2007, when he signed up to star alongside Jet Li in the action thriller War. It was his second opportunity to work with a martial arts legend.
He is, you know, he can play very cold, very, very, very chilling. But off screen, he is quite the opposite. You know, he's always joking, and he has a very colourful personality that really shines through.
After flying to America for the remake of Death Race 2000, he was grateful to be back in Old Blighty for the high-octane heist caper, The Bank Job.
Nothing more rewarding than coming back and making a film in the UK, so there just seems to be a lack of material for me.
The The film, loosely based on the walkie-talkie Baker Street bank robbery of 1971, went over large with critics and audiences around the world, which should ensure Jason can be a bit more picky about where he works in the future.
Just happy working, you know, if we can keep working, and, you know, the more I get to come home and do a film, sleep in my own bed, it'll make me much happier.